Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. A little over 24 hours ago, for the very first time in all of American history, a House caucus deposed their own speaker. A group of hardline members of the Republican majority, led by Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, forced a vote to vacate the Speaker's office, ousting Kevin McCarthy. Now, I'll admit, it is not super clear why Gaetz and his allies thought this was a good idea. The move left a lot of members of their own party bewildered and downright furious. And it has sparked a resurgence of a consistent theme in this political era. Whenever the Republican Party or its leadership acts in a particularly egregious, norm-shattering fashion, conservative politicians, members of the conservative media, and even many members of the mainstream media rush to find some reason to blame Democrats. We've seen it over and over. After Donald Trump won the Republican primary in 2016, it was Democrats who got the blame. You see, liberals were too mean to Mitt Romney in the previous presidential cycle, helping to inoculate Trump and clear the way for him. People still make this argument to this day. During the first Trump impeachment, Republicans tried to blame then-Speaker Nancy Pelosi for their failure to convict the president. It was not their own political calculation or cowardice or moral blindness. No, it was Nancy Pelosi who was at fault for the way they voted. And here's the thing. The worse Republican dysfunction gets, the harder conservatives and commentators seem to work to find any reason to identify Democrats as the root cause of it all. It is almost comical. And so, just like clockwork, we are hearing all sorts of folks blaming liberals for Kevin McCarthy's ouster as Speaker, even McCarthy himself.
I think today was a political decision by the Democrats.
Democrats just removed the Republican Speaker.
Democrats basically turned on Republicans and ousted Kevin McCarthy.
Every one of the Democrats voted against McCarthy.
That's what you get for trusting a Democrat. Right?
I know.
The Democrats who voted to oust Kevin McCarthy, they could have done something about it. They could have thrown him a life raft.
I think a lot of these Democrats on the Problem Solvers Caucus need to be asked, why did you make this decision? Why didn't you step in? Why didn't you cut a deal with McCarthy?
They're all in this town saying, well, I want to work with the other side. Yesterday was the chance, and they failed badly.
I think there was an opportunity for folks to put the country above the insanity. I think it, left a lot of people with a bad taste in their mouth.
Oh, you had a bad taste in your mouth because the Democrats didn't do what you wanted? Is that right, Mike Lawler, running in a +10 Biden district in the state of New York? We have even seen the interim Republican Speaker, Patrick McHenry of North Carolina, last seen banging that gavel very hard and very angrily, exacting a little petty revenge against the Democrats for their betrayal. He ordered Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi and former Democratic leader Steny Hoyer to vacate their what's called hideaway offices, these small offices in the Capitol itself, in what Pelosi described as a sharp departure from tradition. I should note, Pelosi wasn't even present for the vote to remove McCarthy. She didn't vote against him. She's been in San Francisco for the funeral of the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. So yesterday, all the Democrats who were present in the House faced a tactical question about what to do in this nearly unprecedented situation. Remember, it's been more than a century since the last time a House caucus had to decide on how to vote on vacating a speaker. And the only reason that we had this vote was because the rules package negotiated by Gaetz and the holdouts and Kevin McCarthy. They created the conditions for the vote to happen in the first place. And we have certainly never seen this level of House dysfunction before. It's genuinely historic. And I'll say there really were arguments on both sides about how Democrats should handle the vote. I talked to a bunch of people yesterday as I was reporting this out. But those arguments were arguments about how the Democratic caucus should exercise its own political interests and the interests of those people they represent. The idea that Democrats should have protected Kevin McCarthy for the good of the country is nonsense. First of all, if Kevin McCarthy wanted Democrats to vote for him in this vote that only came about because of the rules package he negotiated, Kevin McCarthy, who's a big boy, could have tried to persuade Democrats to make a deal with them. That's the way politics works. He did not do that. In fact, he reportedly waited until the last minute to call the Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries. And his allies said, pointedly, publicly and privately, that McCarthy was opposed to cutting any deals with Democrats. But the even deeper issue at play, as one House Democratic staffer explains in a great thread today, was just basic trust. Quote, "We did not trust Kevin McCarthy, and he gave us no reason to. He could have done so, and I suspect saved his gavel through fairly simple actions. He chose not to do that." Democrats could not make a deal with Kevin McCarthy. They could not support his speakership because his word means nothing. They could not trust him. Keep in mind, McCarthy was already in front of all of us. I mean, he wasn't secretive about this. He was in the process of ripping up the biggest deal he ever made on the debt ceiling, right? They cut the deal with Joe Biden, and then folks in his caucus got mad about the deal, and he was about to go and undercut that deal, rip it up. There was no reason for Democrats to believe that he would not turn around and rip up another deal with them tomorrow. In fact, he had already promised his caucus that he would do that. So he had to be lying to someone, either lying to his caucus or lying to the Democrats if he cut a deal with them. But he's lying to someone. What good would it do them to save McCarthy and then the next day watch him push forward an impeachment of Joe Biden, massively cut social funding, put a whole bunch of awful poison pill provisions into must-pass legislation, steer the country into another shutdown? As Talking Points Memo founder Josh Marshall points out, Republicans' bad behavior and destruction is assumed in Washington. It is given. It's like gravity. Everyone knows and expects it. Everyone else has to work around it. That means that Democrats have to be the ones to figure out how to make the government work. Of course, the dysfunctional, misbehaving Republicans are all grown-ass adults with moral agency. Like, they're responsible for their actions. They make decisions. They can do good things or bad things. So I cannot quite believe this needs to be said. But the people to blame for Republicans blowing up their own speaker are Republicans.